Я хочу зупинитись тут і бути відвертим один раз і назавжди. Ви маєте самі вирішити, за кого ви. Ви суверенна держава. Я був в Будапешті, я обожнюю ваше місто. Я був багато разів. Дуже красиво, дуже дешево, душевно. І такі самі люди. У вас були трагічні моменти в житті. Я був на вашій набережній, я бачив цей меморіал взуття на річці Дунай про масове вбивство. Я був своєю сім'єю. Послухай, Вікторе, знаєш, що відбувається в Маріуполі? Будь ласка, якщо зможеш, сходи на свою набережну. Подивись на те взуття. І ти побачиш, як масові вбивства можуть повторюватись.
So that's obviously fairly devastating from President Zelensky there. If you're listening on our podcast, he's talking, addressing the government leadership of Hungary, talking about historic mass killings and about the fact that they're experiencing in Ukraine every single day very similar things. And in fact, we found out earlier today when the theater was bombed about a week ago, there was something like 1,300 people in it. At least 300 people are feared to have been killed in that bombing. And I will remind you, not only are these all civilians, but Russia, when they did the bombing, they knew that they were. There were large, it was a very identifiable building that was spaced out from other buildings that had signs indicating that this is a place that civilians were sheltering, and more than 300 people killed. That is, like, obviously a lot of people have been killed, and whether it happens in small individual incidents, it's a tragedy anyway, but that one choice, so devastating. Now look, we do have some good news from the point of view of those who absolutely despise this illegal war full of, barbarous war crimes and all that. Ukraine has apparently been successfully pushing back Russian forces in a number of different areas, which is a positive development. They've stymied the Russian advance into a number of different cities. Kyiv was expected that it would be taken relatively quickly. Some cities have been besieged for multiple weeks now. There are areas where they are now successfully pushing back against the Russian forces. Again, bearing in mind that this is coming from Ukraine, which is hardly a completely unbiased source for news. However, this is what they're saying. The Defense Intelligence put out this graphic yesterday, saying that Ukrainian counterattacks and Russian forces are falling back on overextended supply lines. That has been a consistent part of this conflict from the very beginning, allowing Ukraine to reoccupy towns and defensive positions up to 35 kilometers east of the capital in Kyiv. Ukrainian forces are likely to continue to attempt to push Russian forces back along the northwestern axis from Kyiv towards Hostomel airfield. And so all of this is good. In fact, the army put out a statement that the town of Makariv, west of Kyiv, was back under Ukrainian control, saying they had successfully raised the flag again. It's part of the fiercely contested suburban areas around Kyiv where Russia made large early advances, but then started to suffer problems. And again, suffered those problems. If they were to get into these massive cities, it is expected that that would be its own devastating situation for Russia to take and then hold. So it is good to see some success in helping to reestablish control. That does not mean that Ukraine is all of a sudden winning this war or anything approaching that. But Adrienne, I'm curious what you think about what you've been seeing coming out of Ukraine over the past few days.
I continue to realize how strong the Ukrainian people are as they fight, and they do so with such pride and determination. And it's something that they should never have had to be pushed to the point of, but still, seeing how resolute they are, it definitely is inspiring. At the same time, seeing Putin and the Russian forces continue to lie and also to target civilians and to target areas that they know where there are civilians, it really tells you how depraved he is, and also how much he doesn't care about the loss of life or in life at all. And also, it just really is so incredibly disheartening to know that this individual will likely do whatever they feel that they want or need to do in order to essentially have this level of domination that he demands and likely will die fighting for.
Yeah, that's really the fear is the situation is not going anywhere near where they hoped that it would. And the US is saying that they have a lot of intelligence about expectations that Kyiv would fall in a matter of days. And it seems plausible as a non-expert on the region or on Russian military or anything like that. It felt like it could fall in days. We'd talked to journalists who believed that that was a possibility. And so it hasn't worked, obviously, that has not come true. The question is, if it continues on in a non-productive quagmire with rising civilian deaths on the Ukrainian side, more and more deaths military on the Russian side, that could in theory be seen as a bad domestic situation from Putin's point of view. But how much will he care? How much accurate information will get through to the Russian people, and how much avenue is there remaining for popular discontent, were it to grow with the war, to have an effect on him politically? Like you stated that he doesn't care. I don't believe that he cares. And if you don't already believe that, if you find it hard to believe that a leader wouldn't care about the deaths of their soldiers, like how much do you think American presidents really cared about the quagmire in Iraq and Afghanistan? And like how many extra US soldiers died? How many nights of sleep do you think that our political leaders actually lost? And now we're talking about Putin. Probably, if there is compassion to be stripped away from a politician, I think he has done that through the course of his career. So I don't know, it's gonna be interesting to see the level of support internationally, both in terms of equipment, supplies, as well as I just think moral support. I think has been very important. There's detractors, certainly. Marjorie Greene has been encouraging Ukraine to surrender for a couple of weeks now. I just saw on Sean Hannity's program, Tulsi Gabbard was saying they should surrender. They have no chance. Why bother? Which is a position you can take, but I don't see how that leads to a better outcome militarily or politically for Ukraine. What do you think?
No, I don't. And also too, why would I want to be dominated, controlled, taken over, and likely kind of obliterated in what almost seems to be some genocidal campaign by Putin? Why would I want to have that? It's a matter of life and death for me, where I don't want to live under this person's regime. So no, there's no other option but to fight to the death. Let's do it. And so this thought that you have these Americans over here, Marjorie Taylor Greene and the others saying, "Oh, just surrender." Get out of here. It just really shows you their mentality and how weak they are, but not everybody's like that. Some people actually stand for something and are willing to die for it. And I respect that as opposed to Marjorie Taylor Greene's nonsense.
100%. I'm gonna take your side on that one. But let's turn to something very different. There's been an amazing social media campaign from the very beginning in this invasion, where we have gotten a lot of access to information about what's happening there. Incredibly granular information about the attacks, the experience of the lives of those who are engaged in the struggle, both on the military side and the civilian side. And while some of that information might not be making it to Russia, where it perhaps most importantly needs to go, we get a window into this tragedy. And here is a very particular one. So kids who have been involved in like fleeing refugees during the situation are making art to give people an idea of their experience. In particular, Artem and Anastasia Baikovets, they fled Kyiv when Russian troops invaded about a month ago. It took a couple days to get to the west of the country. Bear in mind, millions of people have fled, both outside of Ukraine, but also from one portion of Ukraine to another. So they encouraged their 6-year-old daughter to draw what she was thinking about the conflict. And they've created this Instagram account, uakids.today, to show some of this art. And now, look, obviously, if you want to classify this as propaganda, you are hardly incorrect in that. It can certainly be used for that purpose. But I have been trying to imagine what the experience of these refugees must be like. And something like half of the refugees are children. Here is sort of how they're processing this. If we can put up some of this art, you'll see basically artistic depictions of individual soldiers, just text messages expressing their thoughts, planes attacking ships, soldiers fighting back, tanks fighting tanks, and you can see this. Like some of the art gets to the point where I think these are slightly older kids, 11 and stuff like that. You can see that bottom left one. That's probably better than I could even do. But yeah, people are talking about art therapy in the chat right now. I'm sure it's serving that purpose as well. Adrienne, what do you think about this?
It's It's eye-opening and it's devastating at the same time. The thought that these children should be drawing rainbows and sunshine, and yet they are drawing war, and how much this is going to impact and shape their entire lives. And I have friends who grew up in conflict territories, and the 4th of July, they can't hang. It's not going well. Large or loud sounds, balloons bursting, it scares them. It reminds them of times when they were in the midst of war as children. And just thinking about how this is impacting those kids' lives. That's, the art, I think that's beautiful. At the same time, God, it really sucks.
Yeah, it really does. And obviously, they're gonna need help from a lot of different countries to help either temporarily or permanently resettle a number of these people. Something like 3.3 million refugees that have already moved into EU countries. And Biden announced earlier this week, they're gonna allow 100,000 refugees in, which is far more generous than our country has been when it comes to refugees for well over a decade at this point. Shockingly, it's this conflict where we're being, a little bit welcoming. That's 100,000. That is a tiny little fraction, by the way. And a lot of, especially these kids, are going to experience trauma potentially for the rest of their life. You're totally right about when I was a kid, I was drawing dinosaurs and superheroes that I made up. It was all fictional because it got to be. Because we didn't experience war in that way. Even the wars that happened while I was a kid, Desert Storm and stuff like that, thousands of miles away, we're inoculated from the effects of the horror that our country is unleashing. They're experiencing it every day.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.